千里之行，始于足下。A journey of 1,000 miles begins beneath the feet. We now gather in the Tao to travel the journey together. Welcome to Tao Talks with Eric Lin, where we take a deep dive into the Tao Te Ching by Laozi. I would like to extend a warm welcome to you. Thank you for joining us. I would like to invite you to center your thoughts and direct your attention to this moment in time, to the here and now, to be fully present and mindfully aware as we all ready ourselves for this sacred process in the Tao with one another. So without further ado, let us continue our discussion with the Tao Te Ching. As we discussed previously, the title of this chapter is To Know of Having. And the having in this case refers to the ruler, which in ancient China was the king or emperor. The concept is generalized to cover leadership at every level and every setting of society, in ancient times as well as today. Here is how Tao Te Ching 17 looks. It is relatively short with only 9 lines. We divided these lines into 3 sections last time. Let us take a look. Here's how the 3 sections are divided. Section 1, from line 1 to line 4, talks about the 4 levels of leadership, from the highest to the lowest. We were able to walk through all 4 of them last time. Today, we will cover sections 2 and 3, which is, as you can see in this slide, they consist of only 2 and 3 lines, respectively. So the plan is we will briefly recap section 1 and then go line by line, starting at line 5. So for the first recap, this slide covers the first 2 levels in the leadership paradigm from Laozi. Both of them represent the positive kind of leadership. And as we pointed out last time, the highest is the one that can be more difficult to understand. Here in this slide, the first 2 sub-bullet points illustrate why they may be more difficult for many people to understand. The conventional assumption is often that the highest level is also the most well-known. That's what it looks like in conventional thinking. The Tao seems to be counterintuitive in this case, because in the Tao, the highest is the seamless leadership that can be unknown. So it says the opposite. It says the best can be less known or unknown. Laozi points this out because the actions of a ruler aligned with the Tao can be so smooth and seamless that people are not aware of them. They simply assume they are the ones responsible for the good things that they work on and enjoy in life. The bottom part of the slide is about the second level. It is at this level below the first that we get to what people usually consider to be the best. And that is the leader who is widely loved, admired, and praised. So last time, we discussed why Lao Tzu would go against the usual opinion and name this kind of leadership as the second best. He did so because anything that doesn't last is not congruent with the Tao. Popularity associated with an individual never lasts. Human lifespan is short in the eternal perspective of the Tao. Therefore, although it is a positive thing to have a ruler that people love, it cannot be the best unless it creates goodness for the people that lasts beyond the mortality of a human being. Now, this is the first part of the leadership paradigm, as I said, from Lao Tzu. To many students of the Tao Te Ching, especially who study on their own without guidance, it can be a little puzzling. Continuing with our recap, having talked about the positive kind of leadership, we also covered the negative kind, the two lower tiers. At the third level, the top half of the slide, we have the ruler that people fear. The history of ancient China is full of tyrannical rulers, so perhaps this comes as no surprise. As negative as tyranny may be, Lao Tzu is pointing out that at least the tyrant can be rather effective in that negativity. This frames the lowest level of the paradigm, the bottom half of this slide, as the ruler who is despised for being the opposite, ineffective. Whether that ruler has good or bad intentions, being ineffective relegates that ruler to the lowest tier. This may be someone who comes into power but is unfit to lead. Because monarchy is inherited, it's actually not an insignificant possibility. This can be someone who lacks good judgment, makes poor decisions, usually has no plans for anything, and so on. Ironically, such a person can hold on to power due to being susceptible to flattery and can be easily swayed. This alone will attract sycophants who see an opportunity to advance their own agenda by manipulating such a ruler. We definitely see echoes of this in our modern times as well. So from our discussion last time, covering the higher tiers and the lower, we can now put together a slide that summarizes all of them together and illustrate how people react to the various levels. Here's how the table is laid out. We have the 4 rows representing the 4 tiers, from the highest to the lowest. Each one is a type of governance, and people react differently to it. First, in the highest tier, we have unattached governance. It is called that because the Tao-centric ruler who follows the principles of the Tao will also understand Wu Wei and adhere to that. This means taking the best possible actions without attachments to flow naturally with the Tao. So people are then able to work on their own stuff because the ruler has created a protected environment where it is possible and even easy to be productive. So people are busy working on their own things. They don't think about the ruler all that much. They don't know what's been done. And alternatively, the ruler who works in seamless ways can simply make resources easily available. Point them out for the people so they can tap into those resources to build whatever tools they may need. So what people do as a result of all this is that they move toward greater self-sufficiency. They become more self-reliant. While doing so, they are not aware that the path was paved for them. They take what has been done by the ruler for granted. So just like the Tao itself, think about how the Tao is ever present. It's always there. It's always in plain view, but usually taken for granted. The unattached governance is like that. It's there in the background, but many people are not aware of it. So the topmost level unattached governance is what happens when the wise ruler uses the Tao to govern. I have the character for the Tao to the right of this row in the table. So let's go one tier down to the second level, not the highest, but the high. This is popular governance. This is what people like, what people will say good things about. So what people think is that they are appreciative of all the good things that the ruler has done for them. They are aware of what the ruler has done, whereas in the level above, they are not. And this is why it is popular. People like it, gravitate to it. It is not a bad thing at all. People express their gratitude. They talk about how lucky they are to live under such a great ruler. But this type of governance, as I mentioned, has the possibility of being transient. Good things tied to one person may last only as long as the person lasts. And the person can change. What if, for whatever reason, the ruler changes his or her approach or passes away, and the one who inherits that power is not well liked? So this cannot be the best from the Tao perspective if the goodness is dependent on the person. Nevertheless, while the king is alive, the good king, life is also good for the subjects of the kingdom. And this is because popular governance is achieved through adherence to virtues. So next to this row, I have the Chinese character 德 for virtues. What virtues? Well, we can talk about virtues like patience, temperance, courage, justice, kindness, generosity, humility, honesty, and so on. These are what people appreciate. So the top two are the positive kind of governance. We now move into the negative kind, starting with oppressive governance. In this kind of governance, people are afraid that perhaps they will be the next ones targeted by the tyrants. That is why they fear it. It uses the laws and regulations as a tool to suppress and oppress, to keep people in line, to keep people down. Elsewhere in the Tao Te Ching, Lao Tzu has pointed out that the more numerous the complex the laws becomes, the more burdensome and bureaucratic the governance will be. The more people will use cleverness to exploit the complexity or to get around the rules. What people do, generally speaking, aside from the exploitation, is evasion. They avoid having anything to do with the government. They evade as much as possible. Overall, we can see the oppressive governance is achieved through the use of restrictive laws. So I have the character for laws next to this row. This kind of governance is based on crime and punishment. And of course, being against the tyrant is a crime in itself, punishable by death. Now, the bottommost row, the lowest tier, is incapable governance. This is where the ruler is so ineffective and disliked by all. People are dismayed that the ruler seems to stumble from one failure to another, from one mistake to another. The ruler is ineffective because he lacks the wisdom of the Tao, the goodness of virtues, and doesn't even have the severity of the laws. That is why people are contemptuous. They can tell this type of governance has no ideas, no clue whatsoever. That is why they oppose, mock, and insult such a ruler. They express their disdain. They ridicule the ruler's lack of capabilities and effectiveness. So what does incapable governance use? Nothing. It is literally incapable of utilizing the Tao, virtues, or the law to govern. And that is the core of the issue. So these are the four tiers. Now, I think we are ready to go into section 2, starting with line 5. Line 5 says, if the ruler's trust is insufficient. First, let's break the 4 characters down one by one. The first character is also the most important. It is the character for trust. More on that in just a moment. The second character is not. The third character is enough. So the second and third together is not enough or not sufficient or insufficient. And then the last character there, that is a sentence ending character. So they can only be translated as a punctuation mark. The period. The 2 lines of the second section, they both focus on the central theme of leadership, which is trust. The meaning is that a leader who does not trust his or her people, and we can tell this follows the line about the ineffective ruler. One thing we can be sure of is that anyone who lives under this lowest kind of governance will readily observe a pervasive lack of trust. So the character itself can be belief, or trust. In this case, it's all about the trust that is established between the ruler and the people. If we map this to our lives, we can more easily see what Laozi is talking about. Modern examples include the micromanager who wants to control everything. We definitely have seen that. We observe this kind of negative leadership or the lack of leadership in a personal context. We see the horrible boss who can be a control freak, a backseat driver. They do more harm than good, but they cannot help it, and they usually cannot change for the better. They are tyrants. They are incompetent rulers in their own way. They're ridiculed by the people because nothing erodes team morale as quickly as the lack of trust. In ancient times, such a ruler will have a massively negative effect on the kingdom. So Laozi is pointing out that the untrusting rulers occupy the lower two levels. Line 6. Have no trust in them. This follows the previous line. If the ruler's trust is insufficient, have no trust in them. So this is talking about the other direction of trust, from the people to the ruler. Let's break down the 4 characters. The first character is have, or there is, there are. The second character is no or not. Third character, the same, trust. And the last character, still the same, sentence ending, punctuation mark, like period. So the third character, it means believe, or trust. Here it is all about trust. These are related meanings because one must have credibility in order for people to believe and therefore establish trust. So these are closely related. So this line, when you string the characters together, what it means is that people also have no faith in the untrusting leader or the untrusting ruler. And you can see how Laozi sees mutual trust can be created. It begins from the top down. The one who has the power must be the first to invest faith in the team. Therefore, the ruler has to start out trusting the people before the people will trust the ruler. And if the ruler does not, due to being ineffective or tyrannical, then the people will also withhold their trust. Trust is reciprocal. It has to be initiated from the top down. And the lack of trust negatively impacts morale and motivation. This is just as true in an ancient kingdom as it is in the various organizations we observe in modern times. People simply will not go the extra mile when they do not feel trusted and therefore valued. Now, These two lines have special significance. Lines 5 and 6 appear again in 道德经 23 as the concluding lines of that chapter. Anytime you have repetition in the 道德经, you can see that there is special significance, special importance. So what I would like to do is to show everyone the comparison between these two lines in their context and compare that to 道德经 23, the ending of that. So first, we have what we're currently studying, 道德经 17. Here's a partial excerpt from that chapter showing lines 3, 4, 5, and 6. What we're studying now, highlighting that they follow the previous two lines about the negative kind of governance. If the ruler's trust is insufficient, have no trust in them. Now let's take a look at 道德经 23. We actually have the exact same characters. Here, formatted as one line instead of two lines, translated as those who do not trust sufficiently, others have no trust in them. So a question to be asked here is that if the characters are the same, why are the characters translated in slightly different ways? It is because in 17, what we're studying now, it's about the negative kind of governance. So contextually, it's about that, the ancient ruler and the ancient kingdom. 17, these two lines revolve around the context of the ruler and the different kinds of ruling. 23 is not talking about ancient kingdoms or rulers or the people, the subjects of that kingdom. The context here in 23 revolves around the Tao and the generalized leadership among human beings. Now you can see why the same characters are translated in slightly different ways. It is to accommodate the difference in context. In fact, this is a very good indication that even when Lao Tzu is talking about the governance of the king, he's actually addressing a much larger issue, leadership, using timeless principles. The larger issue that applies to every situation where people are involved. Therefore, what you and I are meant to do is to apply that basic idea in our own lives. If the ruler's trust is insufficient, have no trust in them, we can now see this in the context of generalized leadership. And doing so takes us to the following table. This is about the overall issue of trust. It applies to any setting with group interactions among human beings. Here, I have two columns where trust is present, where trust is absent. The rows in the lead, I have basically the road showing what the people at the higher level in organizational position, what they do, how they are, whether they have or do not have trust. So that's what I mean by lead, a leadership role. Right below that, follow, that would be a following role, which in a company would be the employees that report to a manager. So overall, we can think about the different kinds of organizations that these principles will cover. A company, a firm, a business, a nonprofit, a church, sports team, and so on. Every setting has people in leading roles, like pastors at the church, parents in a family, the coach in a team, etc. So when trust is present, what it looks like is that the higher level of the organization brings together good people, forms a team, a department, a workforce. These people are given the tools that they need to do the job. Then, those in the leading role get out of their way. Do not interfere. Let them do their thing. Let them fully express their potential. So we can understand this better by contrast in looking at what happens when there's no trust. The opposite situation is the supervisor or manager who's always watching, not trusting, just in case people neglect to do what they should, or they do things the wrong way. That goes back to the micromanager, the backseat driver, the control freak. So what about those who are under such a lead in the organizational hierarchy? When trust is present, team members or the people in the department, they reciprocate the trust. Everybody is more than glad to go the extra mile. They feel trusted and valued. Whereas under the untrusting ruler or modern day leader, no one is motivated to do any more than absolutely necessary just to get by. Whenever you see people who are not interested in going above and beyond, that is a sure sign of a lack of good leadership. So the result, when there's positive energy, when there's the positive kind of governance, everyone supports everyone else by in creating or producing outstanding, excellent work. And the opposite, where trust is absent, you can easily guess quality of work suffers. So does the level of service provided to the customers of a particular organization. People simply do not care. So the right side, the rightmost column, this is much more likely to characterize the two lower levels that we talked about, which would be the fearsome ruler, the tyrant, or the ineffective ruler, than the two higher levels, which would be the unknown ruler and the admired ruler. So now I think we are ready to continue our line-by-line discussion by going into the third and last section of the chapter. Line 7, it says, proceeding calmly, valuing their words. Proceeding calmly is a way of describing the positive vibes that one can feel in the positive kind of leadership or governance. The guidance of the Tao, the guidance that is aligned or in accordance with the Tao, that guidance is characterized by progress with calmness, with composure. In that calmness or composure, there is determination and focus on the goal. So I want to emphasize that there is a difference between having a sense of mission and sense of urgency. With a sense of mission, one is more likely to be following a plan with awareness of the steps involved in the correct sequence. And when I talk about sequence in a project to be undertaken, I'm also referring to task dependencies. Some objectives have to be done first before others can follow. They are stepping stones to a larger objective or stepping stones to the next step that logically would follow with the completed task as a requirement. Now, unlike a sense of mission, a sense of urgency has more to do with the time crunch, pressure, and stress, time being of the essence, like deadlines or expiration dates. And this can lead to more of a frantic rush. That is a difference. So, back to the Tao, people feel more of the sense of mission rather than sense of urgency. They are without excessive anxiety or tension. There is also a feeling that what they are doing is exactly what they should be doing because they're following a plan. They know certain things, what needs to be done in every step of that plan. So they can focus on what is right in front of them and not spend time worrying about what is yet to come. So I'm describing the reasons that can lead to this kind of productivity with composure. The second part of this line, these are important characters, 贵言. The two characters mean value, 贵, yan, words. Valuing one's words means less is more. Less specifically in terms of communication. Less words, less commands, less orders will lead to greater impact and effectiveness. Conversely, the more you talk, the more common you will appear, the more mistakes you will likely make, and the less control you appear to possess. So these are the reasons why Lao Tzu and Tao masters in general would advise us to speak less. Wise rulers value their words as a way to maintain control and authority. And Lao Tzu has expressed that even bad weather cannot last indefinitely. This is a recurring theme in the Tao Te Ching. Why should human beings speak less? For instance, in Tao Te Ching 5, Lao Tzu says explicitly that too many words hasten failure. It is therefore better to keep quiet, to remain in the silent void of the Tao. And then, of course, Lao Tzu talks about how the rain and the wind, even heaven, cannot make them last indefinitely. So why should humans speak continuously without a break? We should say what needs to be said and then remain quiet. Now we can look at the entire line together, proceeding calmly, valuing the words. We see that this is all about communication. Communication that is careful, concise, to the point. That is crucial in the process to establish productivity with composure. We can see how true this is just by thinking about the opposite. Careless communication, too many commands. Some of those commands get retracted, so many retractions and corrections as well. Some of these can even contradict one another, and therefore people don't know what to do. The team is paralyzed. And that's why we say Tao-centric communication must be concise, logically consistent, and make the point. That's it. Full stop. The wise ruler must provide that kind of clarity through both spoken and written words. And specifically, what the wise ruler needs to convey is the overall purpose, not just the what needs to be done, and how we do it, but also the why. Why should we do it? What is the reason? That puts everything into perspective. That establishes clear communication and clear understanding. It brings the people onto the path of getting things done. The ruler also needs to communicate the resources that have been prepared for people to tap into. Once you know what is available, what you can use, what needs to be done, there comes a natural reassurance. And then after that, motivation to get into action. Next line. Line 8. Line 8 says, task accomplished, matter settled. This, of course, follows the previous lines that we have looked at. This is talking about how when people proceed calmly, valuing their words, communication being crucial in terms of clarity and conciseness, then it'll lead to task accomplished, matter settled. This means successful outcome has been achieved. And the factors that contribute to that successful outcome are the following. The one who leads must be the first to establish the trust. This is important. The leading position must be the one that initiates. And the basic trust for working together is the foundation that has to be laid down first. Number 2, the people reciprocate by trusting the leader. That is, people quickly realize trust is a two-way street. It's a give and take process. Therefore, both sides must be involved. So 1 and 2 lead to number 3, which is concise and clear communication on both sides, because there is trust as a foundation. There is no second guessing of what someone might have meant when they said something. So there's no excessive commands that can be confusing to people. They're sticking to the point. There's instructions on what needs to be done, and there's also positive encouragement. So the positive kind of leadership is the positive kind of communication. Good job. Doing great. Keep it up. So still talking about line 8, task accomplished, matter settled. This is about group success that applies to every conceivable level. So in the original context, this was about building a kingdom the right way, according to the Tao. So in ancient times, it applied to a kingdom that is peaceful, prosperous, and increasingly powerful. Applied to the modern context, it's about building an organization or group that succeeds in what it sets out to accomplish. This can be a for-profit enterprise, a business that is profitable and popular, but it is not limited to that. It can, of course, be a nonprofit organization. The exact same principles apply. It can be, generally speaking, an inspired team becoming a successful team. That team gets things done on time, on the budget, and with excellent quality. Unfortunately, that is not what we often see. We see teams that are not aligned with the Tao and therefore cannot be on time, on the budget, or produce excellent quality. The end product may be delayed, may be overspent on the budgeting side, or be sloppily put together and doesn't last, isn't durable, can break easily. So applied to you, what about not organizationally, but just your life? Your world, when this is applied, can mean a life that is well balanced between work and family. So this is about taking up a leadership role to build your private kingdom the right way. So for instance, in a family setting, if the parents establish a trusting relationship with the children, and if the parents can have clear communication with them, with clarity of understanding among them, that will naturally lead to a harmonious home. This is also an excellent indication for us that unlike what some people talk about, the Tao is not about quote unquote doing nothing. There's actually quite a bit in the Tao Te Ching about the right way of doing things. And now we're in a position to summarize the ideas expressed by Lao Tzu, applying them to the modern context of our lives. In other words, what does it look like when someone fails to follow the Tao versus when the Tao is present and everything is going smoothly? So the expression used by Lao Tzu is task accomplished, followed by matter settled. We'll stick to just the task accomplished for now. So we can have, contrary to the Tao and aligned with the Tao. At the beginning of this chapter, we saw the top two tiers as being aligned with the Tao, with the topmost one being the Tao, and the second tier being virtue. The bottom two tiers are contrary to the Tao, which is reflected in our modern lives. And we can summarize them as negative governance. Can be tyrannical, can be ineffective, inadequate. Someone in that role not understanding the Tao can be the person who makes everything more complicated. And the reason for that, we see this a lot. The reason for making things more complex is that the complexity keeps other people out. It creates barriers for other people. So the person who is using that negativity can maintain position. This would be a petty individual gravitating to practices, not just this one, but the others that are also contrary to the Tao, therefore creating negative effects. Someone who understands the Tao will have a very different approach. Positive governance, rather than to make things more complex, someone who practices that, someone who understands that, will streamline and simplify to make everything easier for everybody. By benefiting the group in this way, such a leader reaps the benefits of a stronger team in turn. That has the effect of strengthening his or her own position. And this is far more effective than the negative approach of making things complicated. And it's not just complexity. The one who is practicing that negative governance in life is also the one who hoards knowledge, access, and resources, keeping everything proprietary in order to keep control. In contrast to that, the one who is aligned with the Tao, again, a very different approach, sharing knowledge, providing guidance, and mentoring. And both this one and the one above it, you can see are measures intended to strengthen the team. And finally, negative governance also includes creating dependencies. Make the people depend on this petty person so this person can make himself or herself indispensable. So these are all focused on the self. The positive governance focus on people, the team, the group. That person will help people become independent and self-sufficient. So to be able to accomplish that is the essence of great leadership in the Tao. The negative results that we get from negative governance, we see this quite a bit in our lives. People get away as soon as they can. This can manifest as high turnover at the workplace. An organization does not have positive leadership, people will leave whenever they can. Whereas the positive side of the ledger, we have people who strengthen their relationships. They form a team that is more like family. They stick together through good times and bad. So these are the signs to look for. It is what Lao Tzu meant when he talked about task accomplished, matters settled. This takes us to the last line of this chapter. Line 9. The people all say we did it naturally. This refers back to the first line, connected to the first line. People say they did it naturally since they were not entirely aware of the ruler's role. They feel like they did it themselves. So the net effect of leadership in accordance with the Tao is what we discussed in the beginning of this chapter. The Tao-centric ruler lets the people own what they accomplished. It's what they have done. The Tao-centric leader does not take credit. Let the people take full credit. The team is what made it happen, not you. The importance of this can be seen in the realization that Rulers come and go, but the people and their work will continue on. And that which lasts, as we often like to say, is congruent with the Tao. So now we have sufficient understanding in what Lao Tzu has expressed to paint an overall picture of the central topic in this chapter, which is really the Tao of leadership when you think about it. So what Lao Tzu has said revolves around the ruler and the people. Lao Tzu expressed the Tao leadership by using the king and the subjects of a kingdom to lay out the different tiers. And therefore, we can tell the ancient kingdom is the overall metaphor for this chapter. It is meant to represent any group setting involving human beings. So in this slide, we have the ruler, represented here by the royal palace. Then we have the people, represented here by peasants working in the rice paddies. Keep in mind that this can be extrapolated to cover any setting. It doesn't necessarily have to be ancient China. As we have seen, Lao Tzu starts out by talking about the ruler at the highest level, the sage king who follows the Tao. At that level, the wise ruler takes seamless actions that plant the seeds of success for the long term. But many people, untrained in the Tao, are not aware of the seamless actions. Therefore, they don't know much about the ruler. So I have the Chinese characters for not knowing next to this box here. Then, at the next level down, there's the ruler that people love. It is the second level because the goodness of the ruler's governance is dependent on his existence, as we have talked about. It may not last. Then, at the next level down, there's the ruler that people fear. The people live in fear and terror of the tyrant. So not only do they feel fear, they also feel hate for the horrible tyrant. Then, at the lowest level, there is the incompetent ruler that people loathe and detest. They don't fear such a ruler because there's nothing to fear. But they also have no respect for the blunders and the failures. The people deride and disdained this particular type of ruler. So because of this, there's no love lost between the ineffective king and the subjects. And of course, the ruler has no trust in the people at all. This takes us over to the people side. The people are not trusted by the inadequate ruler. By the same token, people don't trust the horrible tyrant either. And this can cover the tyrannical ruler as well as the ineffective ruler. The people simply don't trust. They don't place their trust into such a king, such a ruler. So we can see this is the lower half. This is negative governance. What happens between the bad ruler and the people who live under them? Now we ascend to the levels of positive governance, and we see a very different dynamic. Positive governance, not only is there no fear, but people pay attention. They actually listen to the ruler, and the ruler values his words. They are seen as important. We continue going up and return to the highest level. This is where people are inspired to do the work themselves. They build their part of the kingdom and they take pride in it. They see the accomplishments that they have created as the fruit of their own labor, and rightfully so. It is a result of their own blood and sweat, the years of effort. They do not see it as a gift from the ruler, not something that the ruler has done for them. And why should they? After all, they don't know that much about the ruler. This completes the circle. This is why they say, we did it naturally, meaning we did it all by ourselves. With this slide, I think the meaning of this entire chapter becomes very clear. In one glance, you can see exactly what Lao Tzu meant when he talked about the different levels and how those levels can be applied to life. So this concludes our line-by-line discussion of this chapter 17 of the Tao Te Ching. I would like to encourage everyone to not just understand the words of Lao Tzu, but also think about yourself. As you survey the private kingdom that is your life, please consider the following question. What kind of ruler, which tier are you currently at? Where would you aspire to be? If you aspire to the highest level, what actions can you do that are seamless, that can build the tools and resources that others will need to become more independent, to carry on, to do the work, to take ownership and pride, so that you yourself can reap the benefits from a strong and powerful team of all the people that surround you. In a sense, they are the subjects of your kingdom, just as you are one of the subjects of their kingdom. There are so many possibilities, so much potential. That is why the Tao is precious. Now, I believe we're ready to take a look at the paraphrase. As we paraphrase this particular chapter, our purpose, as always, is to demonstrate our understanding by expressing the original words of Lao Tzu using our modern language. We begin with section 1. Section 1 talks about the levels, as we have talked about, in the paradigm presented by Lao Tzu. Here's how I would like to paraphrase the words from Lao Tzu. In the Tao, leaders can be divided into 4 levels. At the highest level, leadership is similar to the Tao itself, in that many people may not even be aware of it. The second level is what most people recognize as great leadership. A wise leader they admire and praise. The third level is about hate instead of love. A tyrant who inspires fear instead of admiration. At the fourth and lowest level, we have the inadequate ruler, someone that people regard with loathing rather than fear. So that is a paraphrase for section 1. I think it's easy to understand once it is cast into modern language. Section 2 is all about trust. Remember the character Xin. It's belief to believe, trust to trust. In this case, all about trust. Here's the paraphrase I want to offer for section 2. The lower levels of leadership are characterized by the lack of trust. Domineering, incapable leaders trust no one, so they try to control everything and everyone. The people, in turn, also have no trust or confidence in them. Again, it's a two-way street. What goes around comes around. The ruler has no trust in the people, does not initiate that trusting relationship. The people reciprocate in kind with their own lack of trust. Now, the third and final section. This is about what happens when things are done right. When people remain with the positive governance and even the highest level, the unattached governance. So here is the paraphrase I would like to offer for the final and arguably the most important section of this chapter. This is different from the highest level of the Tao, where the ruler values his words and inspires the people to focus on a common goal. They work together to achieve remarkable results, and they take pride in their achievements because they have internalized the goal as their own. This is how it works with the Tao. Everything flows easily and naturally toward excellence. So that is a paraphrase for chapter 17. Now, for the final part of our presentation on 17, we go to the full circle discussion. And we do this part because we oftentimes find that the last line of a chapter connects to the first line, forming the full circle. This chapter 17 is probably the clearest example of that, one of the clearest. In the last lines of 17, Lao Tzu talks about people taking ownership of their efforts and accomplishments. They say we did it naturally. We link this back to the beginning. We see Lao Tzu describing Tao-centric leadership. So these two are definitely tied together. The message is very clear. The one who understands the Tao, that is the ruler or leader who can guide the people into taking responsibility. So naturally, the people will accomplish and they will keep it going. They will maintain it in the days ahead. That is the essence of this chapter, but you and I can take another step a little bit further to abstract the meaning of this chapter from the here and now, the material world, our interactions with one another, to the level of the Tao, the level of spirituality. Think about us and our connection to the Tao. We can look to the Tao as the ruler, leading us The Tao itself is already largely unknown by the general population. The Tao itself is all about seamless actions that occur in our lives. We already benefit from the Tao as providing to us everything that we can possibly need to accomplish whatever we wish in life. It is very powerful. So if we can be inspired by that, we can follow it onto the path, which means we take charge of our own destiny. And we too can say that, well, we did it naturally, except for us, we know that it is with the guidance of the Tao. The meaning, though, is the same as when the ancient people talk about themselves. No one forced them to do certain things. They were inspired to take initiative on their own. So, in the same way, we too are the ones who can be inspired to decide that we want to take ownership of life, to get stuff done, do something about it. And positive governance provides us with the means, the know-how to engage in effective action, to resolve issues, build great relationships, and ultimately, a great life. So for those reasons, I want to end our discussion of 17 with the quote at the bottom of the chapter. Task accomplished, matter settled. The people all say, we did it naturally. And that's the ultimate state of the Tao practice. When we are skillful, when we get better at it, we too can be leading a great life naturally. Previously, when we summarized the first half of 17, part 1, we talked about the levels of leadership. By now, these levels should become very familiar to us. We begin with the leader that is now well known, to the leader who is loved and praised, to the one who is feared, and the one who is disdained. So these represent the different levels, and they map directly to the reactions of the people and the actions undertaken by the people. Therefore, the second half, the second part 2 of the summary, is about that relationship between leadership and the people. As we have seen, we've talked about negative governance. Negative governance meaning the tyrannical ruler or the ineffective ruler. Either way, in either category, there is mutual distrust between the ruler and the people. In that distrust, each side is suspicious and wary of the other. No trusting at all. This creates a vicious circle, sometimes also known as a vicious cycle, a complex chain of events that reinforces itself through a feedback loop with detrimental results. It just means things will go wrong and become worse and worse over time. A system with no tendency toward equilibrium. That is what can happen when there's negative governance. And there is, unfortunately, entirely too much of that in the world. We also talked about positive governance, more toward the Tao, in line with the Tao, in accordance with the Tao. Unlike the lack of trust, in positive governance, there is trust, there is Tao-centric communication on both sides. We have the ruler who values his or her words and therefore speaks less, but clearly. And both sides trust the other. They believe everyone is pulling together in the same direction. So this means people take responsibility for themselves. They take action for themselves. They also adopt this communication, valuing their words, taking a cue from the ruler. They communicate in ways that is not excessive, and they encourage one another rather than to cast blame. This creates lasting goodness. They take the initiative. They do everything necessary to maintain what they have built for themselves. And that's what makes it last. So this is the summary, part 2 for the second half of our 道德经 17 discussion. Now I want to leave everyone with the message to share the Tao. The easiest way to access Tao resources is to visit my author website, dereklin.com. There, you can click on links and go to the webpage where you will find everything listed, such as Taoism.net with information about the Tao and also about this meeting. Our Facebook community where you can ask questions or discuss your thoughts on the Tao with others. Our YouTube channel where you can watch recordings of all our previous meetings. My Amazon author page where you can find books and audiobooks for your continuing exploration. You can also go directly with the web address dereklin.com/links, as you can see. You can use these resources to share the Tao with the people you know who may be interested. When you see the benefits of Tao cultivation in your life, you can share your experience with others through your comments in Facebook or YouTube. If you find my books or audiobooks to be helpful, you can post your reviews on Amazon to help others discover the Tao. This is the path that I am on, so I can say sharing the Tao has benefited me personally in every aspect of life. I would like to invite you to come along with me to share the Tao. Let us travel together on the path in the journey of life. Our meeting has come to an end, but the journey continues on. Until next time, may the Tao fill you with peace and happiness.